There are women who move through this world carrying something the rest of us can barely name. You feel it when you're near them, a presence that seems to exist outside of time itself, as if they've walked through doorways most of us don't even know exist. I spent my life studying these patterns, and what I discovered changes everything about how we understand certain women. These aren't traits they developed or skills they learned. These are marks of something far older, rising up from depths that a single lifetime cannot explain. What you're about to hear might finally put words to what you've always felt but could never articulate. And once you see these signs, you cannot unsee them. Sign 1. A deep hunger for meaning. The first sign reveals itself as a hunger that nothing external can ever fill. While the world around her chases comfort, status, and security, she wakes each day with a question burning quietly in her chest. What does all of this mean? This isn't casual wondering or philosophical entertainment. It's a need as vital as oxygen. She searches for meaning the way others search for air when they've been held underwater too long. Her seeking pulls her toward depth psychology, ancient wisdom, spiritual traditions that speak to the soul's evolution rather than the ego's endless demands. She reads my work not because someone told her to, but because the words describe a landscape she's been wandering alone without a map. The concept of individuation, of becoming who you truly are beneath every layer of conditioning, feels less like theory and more like coming home. Sign 2. An inexplicable connection to places, eras. This second sign emerges as this hunger for meaning connects to something even stranger. She finds herself standing in certain landscapes, before certain ruins, within certain cultures, and something inside her breaks open. Not nostalgia, not tourism, recognition, as if every cell in her body suddenly remembers something her mind cannot grasp. She might feel inexplicably drawn to Celtic mysticism, or moved to tears by the simplicity of a Japanese tea ceremony. She encounters indigenous wisdom and feels like she's remembering rather than learning. I've come to understand this as archetypal resonance, the soul recognizing patterns it has witnessed through humanity's vast collective memory. When she touches these threads, something that has been holding its breath inside her finally exhales. These aren't hobbies or interests, they're homecomings to places that exist outside linear time. Sign 3, a natural, deep compassion. The third sign appears as from this recognition of deep patterns comes a compassion that cannot be taught. Her empathy doesn't emerge from moral training or religious obligation. It flows naturally, like water finding its level. She perceives the fundamental unity between all beings not as a beautiful idea, but as lived truth she cannot escape. When she witnesses suffering, the boundaries between herself and the other become transparent. She recognizes pain as part of the universal human experience. Her desire to help arises without thought of recognition or reward. She gives because she understands at a cellular level that there is no real separation. When someone suffers, part of her suffers too. Not from codependency or poor boundaries, but from genuine perception of interconnection. This empathy exhausts her because she carries the world's weight more consciously than most. She cannot look away from suffering or dismiss it as someone else's problem. The collective pain others manage to ignore through distraction, she feels in her bones. Sign 4, an unshakable inner calm. The fourth sign reveals that somehow, beneath this exquisite sensitivity, lives an unshakable stillness. External crises don't destabilize her core. She has witnessed, through some mysterious inner knowing, that every storm eventually passes. While others panic when the ground shifts beneath them, she becomes the eye of the hurricane. Not because she doesn't care, but because she's learned that chaos is temporary and the center holds. I've called this the transcendent function, the capacity to hold tension between opposites without collapsing into reaction. People sense this quality in her and instinctively turn to her during collective despair. Her very presence becomes proof that it's possible to remain whole when everything else is breaking. She doesn't offer empty platitudes. She doesn't need to. Her being reminds others that something within us survives every loss, every betrayal, every ending. That core cannot be destroyed by circumstance. Sign 5. She's ahead of her time. This fifth sign shows itself as this inner stability allows her to perceive patterns that others miss entirely. She's perpetually ahead of her time, sensing cultural shifts and collective changes before they crystallize into obvious movements. I've long believed significant changes first emerge as ripples in the collective unconscious, appearing in dreams and the intuitions of sensitive individuals long before they manifest as social phenomena. She speaks of what she perceives, and others dismiss her as impractical or strange. Years later, when her observations become mainstream truth, no one remembers she saw it first. Being a pioneer means carrying the loneliness of vision. She's learned to speak less about what she knows because those ready to understand will recognize it, and those who aren't will only resist. She walks ahead of the collective, which means she often walks alone. This necessary distance from consensus reality creates a particular kind of isolation that shapes everything about how she moves through the world. Sign 6. A need for solitude. The sixth sign manifests in how she doesn't just tolerate solitude, she requires it like oxygen. For her, time alone isn't social failure or escape. It's the sacred space where she returns to herself, where she can finally hear the whispers of her inner world without external noise drowning them out. She often feels like she arrived from another era and is trying to navigate customs that feel completely foreign. The speed of contemporary life, the superficiality of most interaction, the constant noise that others thrive on, all of it drains her. Solitude becomes where she integrates, where she processes the overwhelming input of a world moving too fast and valuing too little. Others worry she's lonely, but she knows the difference between loneliness and sacred aloneness. In silence, she's not running from connection. She's accessing the deepest connection possible, the one with her own soul. Here she can read, reflect, create, simply exist without performing or explaining. She emerges renewed, able to meet the world again because she's touched that still point inside that reminds her who she is beneath every role and obligation. Sign 7. The detachment from material success. The seventh sign appears in this clarity as she's discovered something that baffles those around her. She cannot attach meaning to material success. Objects feel heavy, temporary, ultimately empty of real value. The experienced soul recognizes the futility of gathering what cannot be carried beyond this life. She didn't arrive at this through moralistic rejection of materialism. It emerged naturally from lived experience, from discovering that every achievement and acquisition she pursued left her feeling exactly the same inside. This doesn't mean she lives in poverty or rejects beauty. Rather, she finds richness in simplicity. A sunset moves her more than an expensive purchase. A genuine conversation feeds her more than any prestigious event ever could. She's internalized a truth the world fights desperately to deny. Only inner growth and authentic experience constitute lasting treasure. Everything else is borrowed scenery in a play that will eventually end. Sign 8. An affinity with children and elderly. This eighth sign reveals itself as this understanding shows itself most clearly in how she relates to children and the elderly. I've observed that evolved souls recognize in children the archetype of the eternal child, that pure eternus, representing original purity and unfiltered connection to the archetypal realm. She sees in their eyes something she remembers, a clarity not yet obscured by the world's conditioning. Children respond to her differently than they do to other adults. They sense she actually sees them, not as projects to mold, but as complete souls in smaller bodies. She speaks to them with respect, understanding that age doesn't determine a soul's depth. She listens to their questions, their imaginative constructions of reality, recognizing wisdom adults have forgotten. Children share with her what they hide from everyone else, sensing safety in her presence. This affinity with both children and elders reveals profound truth. Real age is measured in depth of soul, not years accumulated. She relates to both ends of the spectrum because they remain closest to the veil, to the mystery that middle life forgets in its frantic building and maintaining. Children have just arrived from mystery. Elders are preparing to return to it. She stands in that middle space but remains oriented toward mystery rather than mundane, which is why she finds kinship where others see only age. Sign 9, a spiritual hunger. The ninth sign emerges as from this orientation comes an organic spiritual hunger that no crisis created. Her interest in transcendent realities doesn't come from fear of death or need for comfort. It's a natural need of her being, like a plant turning toward light without thought or decision. I've written about souls with developed intuition that spontaneously perceive subtle dimensions invisible to ordinary awareness. For her, the spiritual realm isn't escape, it's recognition of what's fundamentally real, the invisible scaffolding holding the visible world together. Religious dogmas and rigid doctrines feel constrictive to her expanded vision. She may study many paths, finding wisdom in unexpected places: Christianity's mystics, Buddhism's meditation practices, indigenous animism. She draws from diverse sources, weaving her own understanding. She knows ultimate truth cannot be contained in words or rules. It must be experienced directly, lived personally, discovered through your own inner journey. This spiritual orientation shapes everything. She seeks meaning over pleasure, growth over comfort, truth over distraction, and paradoxically, this doesn't make her grim. She often experiences profound joy in simple moments because she perceives the luminous quality underlying ordinary experience. Everything becomes spiritual practice. Every conversation an opportunity for deeper connection. Every loss an initiation into more authentic living. Sign 10. The depth in her eyes. The 10th sign is perhaps the most visible to others, as when you live with this level of awareness, something changes that cannot be hidden. Her eyes carry a quality that cannot be faked. There's a depth in her gaze that speaks of long inner journeys, of sorrows metabolized into wisdom, of illusions surrendered and truths embraced. The eyes reflect not just this life, but the wisdom of the self, that deeper center of consciousness connecting to something eternal beyond the ego's small concerns. When you look into her eyes, you sense you're being seen completely, not just the persona you present, but the truth beneath it. This can be deeply comforting or profoundly unsettling, depending on how at peace you are with your own depths. Her gaze doesn't judge, but it perceives. There's a quality of witnessing, of recognition, that can make others feel simultaneously exposed and accepted. She sees your shadow and your light, your wounds and your potential, and she doesn't turn away from either. When two old souls meet, there's often a moment of silent recognition through eye contact alone. No words needed. In that instant, the isolation each carries eases slightly. Someone else sees what they see. Sign 11, a powerful intuition. This 11th sign shows that this sight connects to a powerful intuition that operates beyond rational analysis. This isn't guesswork or hopeful thinking. Her intuition functions as direct access to the collective unconscious, accessing wisdom that bypasses linear thought entirely. I've explained intuition as one of the four functions of consciousness, the one that perceives possibilities and patterns not yet visible to sensing or thinking. She's learned to trust this inner guidance even when it contradicts logic or popular opinion. Often her intuitive hits prove accurate in ways that surprise even her. She might sense when someone's lying without concrete evidence. Their words sound right, but something in her knows they're false. She predicts outcomes before they unfold, feels in her body which direction to move without understanding why, until later when events reveal the wisdom of her choice. This gift isolates her because she lives in a culture worshipping rational proof and dismissing subtle knowing. When she acts on intuition, others question her sanity, yet she's learned that ignoring her intuition always leads to regret. Every single time she's overridden that quiet inner knowing to please others, she's paid a price. Sign 12, understanding human nature. The 12th and final sign appears as this intuitive capacity culminates in an exceptional understanding of human nature. She sees through social masks with unsettling ease. She perceives hidden motivations, unconscious patterns, shadow material people work desperately to conceal. I've taught that those who've integrated their own shadow naturally recognize it in others. Having faced her own darkness, her own capacity for self-deception, her own defended places, she reads these patterns like a map she's memorized. She's not fooled by charm or impressive presentations. She reads energy and intention more accurately than words and actions. Someone can speak beautifully, but she senses the emptiness behind the eloquence. Another person may be awkward and inarticulate, yet she perceives the genuine heart beneath the clumsy expression. This perceptiveness protects her from manipulation and false relationships. She sees what's real, but this clarity generates its own loneliness. When you see through pretense, genuine connection becomes rare and precious. Most social interaction occurs on a surface level she can no longer fully inhabit. She finds herself surrounded by people while feeling profoundly alone because few are willing or able to meet her at the depth where she naturally resides. She's not arrogant about this awareness. If anything, it makes her more compassionate, because she understands that most people are unconsciously driven by wounds and fears they haven't yet faced. She sees the hurt child within every adult, the pain beneath every defense, the longing beneath every pretense. This understanding prevents judgment even as it creates distance. She cannot unsee what she sees, cannot return to the innocence of taking everything at face value. These 12 signs don't appear as achievements to collect or goals to reach. They emerge naturally, like flowers from deep roots. The woman with an old soul doesn't seek to prove her maturity to anyone. She simply lives from this reality, often without recognizing how different her inner world is from those around her. I must remind you that recognizing yourself as an old soul isn't cause for pride, but an invitation to responsibility. It asks you to honor your unique path of individuation, that lifelong process of becoming fully yourself. It requires accepting both gifts and burdens that come with deeper sight. You cannot unknow what you know. You cannot unsee what you see. You cannot return to unconsciousness once awareness has dawned. The true mark of an evolved soul is humility before the infinite mystery of existence. She knows that no matter how much she understands, infinite layers remain hidden. Each answer opens into deeper questions. Each insight reveals how much stays unknown. If these signs resonated with something deep inside you, perhaps you've always known what you're just now beginning to name. This recognition isn't the end of a journey, but a new beginning, an invitation to live more consciously from the truth of who you are. You are not alone in this way of being, though it often feels that way. There are others who walk this path, who understand this particular blend of gifts and loneliness, who see what you see and feel what you feel. And perhaps that recognition, that knowing you're not the only one carrying this ancient weight, makes all the difference.